In this lecture, I'm going to talk about CommonJS module format that is used in Node. So as part of this, I'm assuming you have some basic familiarity with Node. At least you have installed it on your machine and built a simple Hello World example. If you haven't, that basically means you are a front-end developer, so you have only used JavaScript inside of browsers. If that's the case, skip this lecture and watch the next lecture where I talk about ES6 modules. So this code I'm using, if you want to code along with me, you can download this as a zip file attached to this lecture. Now, here in the terminal, we can run this application with node index.js, and we get this message, circle with radius 10. Now we want to modularize this simple program. So here's a basic rule of thumb about modularity. Things that are highly related, they should go together. For example, in your kitchen, you have glasses, plates, spoons and forks, and so on. You don't store your clothes in the kitchen, right? They belong to your bedroom. So things that are highly related, they go together. This is what we call cohesion in software engineering. The same principle applies to code. So in this piece of code, we're going to find things that are highly related and then move them outside of this index.js. Can you pinpoint what parts are highly related? Well, we have this weak map radius that is used inside of this circle class, right? So these two pieces are highly related. We need to take these outside of the index.js and put them in a separate file. So I'm going to create a new file back in the index.js, cut this code and move it here. Now let's save this as circle.js. So here's our circle module. Now, by default, everything that we define in a module is considered to be private. So it won't be accessible to the outside unless we explicitly export it. The way we export objects in Node or CommonJS format is like this. So here we have this keyword module, which refers to the current module. This module has a property called exports, and this is an object. We can add one or more properties to this object. So we can add a property called circle and set that to this circle class here. Now, if we had multiple classes here and we wanted to export them all together, we could do something like this. Maybe we had a square class. We would export that like this too. So this module.exports is an object with two properties, circle and square. And then we can import this object inside of our index.js and access these properties. But in this implementation, we're exporting only a single object. So we can simplify this code like this. First, let me remove this line. Now, instead of adding a circle property to this module.exports object, we can just reset this object to circle. So when we import the circle module, we'll get the circle class, okay? Now, let's go back to our index.js or index module. On the top, we want to import the circle module. We use the require function for that. This require function is part of the CommonJS format. So CommonJS format defines this require function and module.exports. This is the syntax that is used in CommonJS format, okay? Now, back in the index.js, we want to require, here we pass a relative path to this target module. We use period and slash to refer to the current folder and then add circle. Note that we don't need to add the extension. We don't need to add circle.js because that's assumed by default. Now, when we require this, we get what is returned from this module. So module.exports represents the object that is exported from this module. In this case, that object is the circle class. So back in the index.js, we get this and store the result in a constant called circle. And then we can use circle to create a new circle object. Now here's the interesting part here. In the circle module, we are only exporting the circle class. So this radius weak map is not accessible in our other modules. This is part of the implementation detail of the circle module. What we're exporting, which is our circle class, is what we call the public interface. So public interface, and radius is implementation detail. So this is abstraction in practice. We're hiding the details or the complexity inside of a module. Tomorrow we may decide to replace this weak map maybe with a symbol or a different object. That change is not going to break the rest of this application because nowhere else we have code that touches this underline radius object. It's part of the implementation detail of this module, okay? Now, let's save the changes back in the index.js, save. So here in the terminal, I'm going to run the application again and everything should work. So node index.js, and we get the same message. So this is how we use CommonJS modules in Node. In the next lecture, we're going to look at ES6 modules.